Well, welcome back, Stu. I heard
We
you
are
went to...
for our 400th.
Yeah, is that right?
No.
I heard you went to Staten Island.
You know, I am driven to go to Staten Island. I love taking the ferry over, even in the cold weather. Get your butt outside and feel the cold. Get off, take the Staten Island Railway.
Oh, God. Well, can I tell you what I plan to do a little later is go to Bergdorf's to the after Christmas sales. And that's as far as I'm going. The Staten Island thing.
You know, a disappointing restaurant, though. I go to an Italian restaurant. I took the train, got off, went down to an Italian restaurant, and was not greeted. I won't go into it now. It's a friend of the day.
Okay, yeah. No, I have to tell you, whenever back in the good old days when Barney's was still open, I used to go eat at Fred's, which was the restaurant there. It was very nice. You would hate it. And one of the biggest retail tragedies of my lifetime was when Barney's closed. Every time I walk by the carcass of the store, it saddens me to think there's one less place where I can get luxury items. So I didn't.
Well, yeah, we won't meet in those stores.
No, we will when we go for your fashion week. But that all said, Stu, so this week has been a plethora of news and obviously the biggest, maybe one of the big stories of the week is the funeral of our former president. I already went on my little stem winder about him. So I'm going to leave it to you to discuss.
Well, there's an odd twist to his involvement, a little story that I never would have expected until yesterday. So I don't want to call this Together in Death, but there's a certain linkage here. Peter Yarrow, and we have mostly older people listening to us, I imagine. They'll know the name of Peter Yarrow. He was part of Peter, Paul, and Mary. Peter Yarrow, Mary Travers, Paul Stuckey. Mary Travers died years ago. Stuckey's still alive. Yarrow died on January 7 in New York City of bladder cancer. I love those guys. I went to see him in 63 or 64 when I was going to college in Baltimore. Blowing in the Wind, Lemon Tree, If I Had a Hammer, Leaving on a Jet Plane, and many others. Jet Plane was there.
Puff the Magic Dragon.
Puff the Magic Dragon. Some of these they wrote, some of these they took from other people and made famous. They were my favorite folk singers, along with the Mamas and the Papas.
You hippie.
Yeah, I liked that music. I wasn't much of a hippie, but I liked that music.
It was good. I enjoyed it too, even though it's a little before my time, not exactly. And, still lament the tragic death of Mama Cass choking on a ham sandwich.
Yes, in a bathtub in London. I think that was after she had gone solo. She pulled out.
Yeah.
In 69, now we get off the happy kick. In 1969, and some of this people won't know, after a concert in New York City, Yarrow invited a young 14-year-old girl into his dressing room. He was nude, and years later, and there's no question about this.
Yeah, no, I've heard.
Years later, the girl said, he made me touch him until, and I'll leave the rest out. Now comes 1970, just a year later, and he pled guilty to a sex offense. And for that incident I just described. And he could have been sentenced to 10 years. They gave him 1 to 3. He was out in 1 month, it turns out. I'm not happy about that. But it gets a little deeper. By the way, on the good side again, which is he's been apologizing profusely, openly in many settings for his wrongful behavior. He doesn't give any of these half-hearted apologies that don't amount to anything. I'm not condoning his conduct, but you like to hear people come out and admit wrong when it's being done. And on that front, I have to ask folks who might be listening, how many times have you heard an honest, full-throated apology from a politician for a bad deed? Not commonly.
Sadly enough, the last time I think someone actually gave a sincere apology was Nixon after Watergate.
The rest of them, they're saying, well, and, who was it? It was Clinton.
The rapist.
Depends how you define this or that. Though.
Right, and he gave some half-assed apologies after denying it. And we don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, it goes on.
Okay.
So in 1981, and here's where it gets nasty, the day before Jimmy Carter left office, he pardoned Peter Yarrow. Now, in the first place, I don't understand. I'm not sure I've ever heard of any individual, any felon or any committer of a misdemeanor. Someone, I haven't heard of anyone imprisoned for a sex crime against the child getting pardoned. I didn't conduct enormous research, but what I found, I didn't find any indication that that had ever occurred before. And that is something, I mean, how do you explain pardoning a person who has committed that? I say to myself, I believe in what's his name?
Carter?
I believe in his decency. And if you start from that proposition, as I do, I say, how do you get over that hurdle? How do you dare do this? I can only imagine that he thought, well, the rest of the guy's life in other ways was so great in terms of social positivism and adding this and that it somehow overwhelmed that crime. I cannot see anything which should allow a pardon in that kind of case. And finally, the name Barbara Wintour. Now, Barbara Wintour is that young child, was that 14-year-old. She's in her 60s now. At one point, she said, when she was an adult, of course, I was not informed of the pardon before reading it in the press. I assume that's true. I saw nothing contradicting it. I understand, when you're dealing with criminals and you're giving them pardons, they're not going to object. You don't have to give them notice. They're the ones who asked for it, and they're going to get out. And they're happy. But this case strikes me as something where you should have given an alert or something, or some explanation.
Well, it's a further example of why I've told you that Jimmy Carter is a sanctimonious dunce. He was so wedded to his Christian beliefs and forgiveness and the like that he decided to forgive a child molester. And I believe in his own sanctimony and righteousness. He probably thought, this guy had paid a price and just what you said. But at the end of the day, he didn't really go to prison that long, as you mentioned, and he was basically a child sex offender. And but Jimmy Carter, also coddled all kinds of dictators.
And they die within 7 days of each other.
Yeah.
Or 9 days.
Well, maybe, I don't think Jimmy's going to hell, and I don't actually think Yarrow's probably going to hell either, but maybe they'll meet in purgatory, and Jimmy can touch his little thing, and they can sing Puff the Magic Dragon as it expands. I'm sorry, this is why there's no reason why we should be lauding this guy. He is a sanctimonious liberal who undermined American foreign policy, left us in a damaging position. And then you have to tell me this about the pardon, but I did hear about it. And I was like, nothing surprises me. But this pardon is nothing compared to what we've seen after the fact, okay? Let's assume it was just a mistake in judgment or whatever. But we've discussed extensively the clemency and pardons of this absolutely disgraceful exit that Biden's doing. But let's just talk about some of the things in his last gasps that he's doing, okay? First, he had an interview in USA Today, and in it, he is still expressing confidence that he would have won if he ran against Trump in 2024. Now,
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how delusional can you be? If you were actually popular and doing a good job, the Democrats would have propped you up no matter how demented you were, okay? Bottom line. Because all they care about is winning. They don't care about anything else. Secondly, in the same breath, he acknowledged that he wasn't sure that with his age and health issues that he would be able to last a full 4 years. So you made a decision to run for president knowing full well that you were unhealthy and couldn't do it, yet did it anyway to gratify your ego.
That's just horrible. That's anti-democratic. It's anti-American.
Well, that's Joe Biden and his disgusting son and his that whole ridiculous situation. And then he also revealed that he is considering preemptive pardons for the quack and fraud Dr. Fauci and Liz Cheney. Now, Dr. Fauci did lie before Congress, and if he did, we'll say allegedly lied. If he did, he should be held accountable for it. As for Liz Cheney is concerned, she didn't do anything wrong. If anything, she probably is more entitled to a presidential Medal of Freedom than some of the clowns.
I fully agree. I'd never thought of that.
Right, but I mean, you may not agree that she showed
courage. She's bright. She spoke in the face of aggression.
She's some kind of against her own party. She's a profile in courage. Whether you agree with her,
I agree.
I mean, and you know, I know the Republicans have been trying to talk about how she did things that were illegal. They're full of it. They're never getting anywhere. That's about as likely to happen as renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. But yeah, I mean, it's just comical and farcical because
add that to Greenland.
If the objective is to bolster the economy and do something about the border and big picture items, release the hostages, etc., from Gaza, these issues are preposterous and they're never getting anywhere anyway, along with the idea of it annexing Canada. And
they're offensive. They're not only offensive, they're frightening to other nations. And that has repercussions.
I agree.
To the extent you start causing fear and antagonism in the houses of our allies, as well as others, you are encouraging and strengthening the opportunities for China and Russia.
Well, let's face it. The guy is a bully. He's like used to being, buying up some property he wanted, and he's using these tactics as president, but that's not how it works. But back to Biden, though, okay? We discussed his pardons, and we discussed his disgraceful personal behavior. Now, in his last slap, or last guys, he granted Presidential Medal of Freedom to a number of unworthy people. And just so you know what it means, you award this, like the highest civilian honor awarded to individuals who have made exceptionally meritorious contributions to society or the national security or the national interests of the country, to world peace, or to cultural or other significant public or private endeavors, okay? Now, if you were to tell me Jimmy Carter got this, I could see how, okay? So I've criticism. On the other hand, a woman who has been the long-serving editor of Vogue magazine, which promotes distorted body images of women, is racist, elitist.
It's a commercial editor.
She has never done anything to benefit society. And the only thing she ever really inspired is that they had a movie that was loosely The Devil Wears Prada, where they kind of portrayed her as this nasty, unpleasant, horrible woman, which is what she is. And she's had no social impact whatsoever other than the movie. And she's also been accused of promoting racism and the like, because for a long time, Vogue was not putting black women on their cover. Now they want to compensate, but let's face it, the fashion industry is extraordinarily racist, and she is an arbiter of it. And I guess maybe because she throws the Met Gala or is involved in that, somehow this justifies it. It's perplexing that you would give an award to someone so unqualified. And as you noted, that Jane Goodall, the champion, the ex, kind of has been out in the field taking care of, the chimp.
In danger, without getting a lot of daily publicity, at risk, without great benefits and no sense of extravagance out there, doing great things.
Yep. And then, of course, Soros.
Oh, wait, I got to tell you, though, I think I just told you this, but when I happened to pass by this event going on, I could see Goodall in the background, sitting in the second row, and up front, being talked to by Biden was Wintour. And I didn't see a look of love or affection.
It's completely disgraceful, but it's just what we'd expect out of a guy who's not very bright and a plagiarist and a liar. In addition to that, George Soros gets one. And what has he ever done, Stu? And I'll tell you what he's done. He's donated substantial amounts of money to the Democratic causes, and that's fine and good, but that does not really make him someone who's benefits society, particularly in light of the way the Democrats have damaged New York State and California and other places.
Has he given money to other causes which one might consider more?
Yes, he has. He funded the election of progressive prosecutors, and he's supposedly been supporting democracy throughout the world. But his version of it, Stu.
Yeah.
And may I also note that in France in 2002, he was found guilty of insider trading. He's tried to appeal it, saying he's innocent, it's politically motivated. But he's a rich billionaire, never really been held accountable for his corruption because his money, he's basically a money speculator. And in China, too, they have blamed him for one of the meltdowns in the market with all his money speculation. This is a guy who knows how to make money, he has a big ego, and he wants to put his imprint on us. He has his own personal security. We have to deal with people like Alvin Bragg and the conditions in our subway and the rest of the city, which is more dangerous than it has been because of progressives. And they all need to pick now the coup de grace, of course, of these Medal of Freedom, Hillary Clinton, okay? She is a partisan Democrat who defended her husband for the sexual abuse and mistreatment of women vigorously. She said it was a right-wing conspiracy, which was all a lie. In her more recent history, we have her complete mismanagement of the Benghazi affair. We have the email scandal, where she basically did the same things the Democrats tried to prosecute Trump for. So this is, I can't imagine, and this was also obviously a slap in the face to Trump, but let's face it, she lost to Trump because of who she was. She was a horrible person, and no one liked her. They liked her less than him, and that's how he won. And
his sister is a solid Democrat, has been all the time. And when she said to me, I don't like that woman, I said, that woman's in trouble.
Yeah, well, she should be in jail, but that's another issue because she's a crook as well. And now, as Biden takes his last gaps, I have the good news of reporting as well that another progressive idiot is going by the wayside, and that's from our newly annexed state, Canada, Justin Trudeau, who really is a Nepo baby. He never would have gotten to be prime minister without his father's money, legacy, etc. But he got there. He's arrogant. He has been pushing his progressive vision in the same sanctimony that Jimmy Carter pushes his, or did push his. And it backfired on him because Canada has had enough and he's gone and he's ruined, I think. He is so unpopular and disliked. And for someone who promoted all this racial and gender equality stuff, he kind of really isn't in the position to do so because there were pictures of him that came out while he was prime minister, and this was part of his undoing, when he was dressed in blackface, which is racist. And then his whole family went to India to visit, and they had pictures of them dressed in traditional Indian garb. Talk about cultural appropriation. Well, Justin, he is obviously younger and more vigorous than Biden, Biden was never a Nepo baby. In certain respects, Trudeau is even more repulsive than Biden because of those qualities. He's like a Kennedy without the drug addiction and murders. But good riddance to him, too. So 2025, Canada is finally free of this nightmare that he has caused that country. How it all gels, I will predict, though, it's not going to gel with them becoming part of the United States. And by the way, if it were to become part of the United States, what makes Trump think they're going to vote for Republicans if they're a part of it? I mean, they don't want Puerto Rico to be a state because they're worried about having 2 Democrat senators more. Imagine what Canada would bring us, because it's definitely a more liberal country. What kind of idiot is he? And now we can turn our attention, Stu, to the disasters that are going on, on the state level.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go down to the city level, and it's just, okay, there's a guy named Jeffrey Maddrey. Many of you may have heard of him by now. And until recently, he was the chief of the department, the senior position under the commissioner in New York City, in the New York City Police Department. He resigned on December 20. He was accused by at least two New York Police Department ladies, if I may use that word, of being forced to have sex in return for a large amount of overtime. Okay, no, wait a minute. Can't you just say no? I mean, let me just... Now, these two people, the first, Ingrid Sanders, she was Maddrey's ex-driver. In the fiscal year 2023, she made $164,000 in overtime.
She must have worked really hard at work.
You got this guy. And so you add that to, and it made to a regular salary, and it was a total of $352,000 for the ex-driver. I mean, ex being, she's no longer that, because he isn't there. And the second lady, another lady, I'll put it in quotes, and it's hard to pronounce this one, Quathisha Epps. She was on, quote, special assignment to work.
Let's keep a straight face.
I'm sorry, it's very hard to do this. On special assignment to Jeffrey Maddrey. And she made $204,000 in overtime in 2023 for a total of $403,000. Now, so you wonder, and in theory, that would come out to about, I read, 74 hours a week of work. Well, she probably was working, but a lot of it should be unpaid or something. It's in bed, or she's elsewhere. She's on her knees or doing something, but it ain't work in the office. And she said, in response to questions about what is she doing there, she said, I juggle more than one role. I'm a really good lady. I do positive things. I bet she does. So
it depends on your perspective.
Exactly.
Well, this is just one more example of what's going on.
Exactly. But let me just persist because it gets better. So both these ladies have put in their papers for retirement. That, I take it, is an act you have to take to try and preserve your pension, and maybe you have to get there before an indictment. I don't know what the chronology is there, but they're not doing it. It's not just by circumstance, by coincidence that they just put in their papers. All three are now being investigated by the New York State Attorney General, and regardless of what you think of her, she's a pit bull, and she'll be after these people. The Manhattan DA, he will go after them. And then the feds are involved. And all I can gather from reading the papers is that their only legal interest would be if they were following the trail of money that was given to the city for police work. And they want to know whether this money they gave them, that went to overtime. So that's what I suspect their interest is. Okay.
Can I imagine? That's a lot of money to pay for sex. I mean, why not just go to the West Side Highway and find...
So it should be a civil action, in fact. And, where did you say? Go where?
To the West Side Highway and find someone cheaper.
That's right. That's it. That's the one that guy for Giuliani went to.
I didn't even know that, but okay.
Oh, yeah, that was the one. The guy who ended up becoming an officer of Trump for a short while, or a candidate for...
Oh, God.
That guy. That's where he went. Okay, so Maddrey isn't done with his good works, shall we say. He is trying to get a so-called good guy letter, and that would allow him, it's not a statutory thing, but that would allow him to carry a pistol now that he's not on the force, carry a pistol in New York City. And usually that's given only to those of high moral stature. That's one of the requirements. Now, I think we can all decide that one's not going to fly, but the paperwork is in, the request is in, and the reason why people want that permit, cops would be allowed to have very high pay private work if they can carry that rest of. That's the gig. And now the new commissioner, Jessica Tisch, who I think is showing really strong in her early days in office, she's considering the matter. She didn't respond reflexively and give it to him. I think he's not going to get that letter. I don't believe. Now, the final, this is kind of an upbeat kind of thing. Keeshant Sewell. Do you remember the name?
No.
How soon they forget. She was police commissioner before Caban and before...
didn't she resign after a day?
Or from someone. I think, I've forgotten who it was. She resigned after about a year and a half.
Yeah, it was a very short.
And she resigned, though, without acrimony. She resigned without giving reasons. She only later did the New York Times and others come to the conclusion that she was not free to manage her office, that she had, and specifically, that she had to give cede to Adams approval for senior appointees. Now, just look at the two appointees that we're talking about. Now, in the first place, it's Maddrey and his predecessor, Caban. Both of those guys have now been ousted in scandal. Doesn't that show good sense on her part? You can imagine that's why she was getting out of there. She thought she'd be in a quagmire, and she's right. And now the footnote for her, where is she now?
Running Columbia. I don't know.
New York Mets hired her. I just
for security?
For two things. Security and guest experience, whatever that is. She's senior VP for those things. I say good for her.
Yeah, I say
they saw a good
for
person.
her. And it's a disgrace that the best we could come up for is someone like Eric Adams. But let's face it, Stu, when our choices are these progressives, who else are you going to pick? And this guy is obviously...
There's a lady I know who's kind of in these things and has real good sense about local politics and state politics. She said to me when he first got in, before anything happened, she said, he does not have a background of management and does not have management skills. And what we're talking about is management.
Well, it's also he has no ethics.
There's that problem. I mean, that's the truth. And so even if you say some of his appointments, and there have been many now that have landed in scandal, that would be a wonderful, when they start getting prosecuted and imprisoned, that would be a wonderful little chart in some magazine or some long story, somewhere, a TV documentary.
It would look like a Rube Goldberg contraption, and with all the different conspiracies.
And they're scum, and he's picking them. Some of them, even if all were without corruptive intent, they were all indicative of a lack of management capability.
Absolutely. Well, he's not the only mayor who has problems and is problematic. Let's talk about the tragedy that is going on in California. Over 2,000 homes have been destroyed in a wildfire.
Very sad. No, I mean, horrible.
Now, part of it is natural because the Santa Ana winds are apparently, they dry up all the vegetation.
But not expected this late and not with this force.
Right. It's an unusual occurrence. But the mayor, Karen Bass, before she left the state and the country, flew 7,000 miles away to go to Ghana to watch the inauguration of the president there. Why is the mayor of Los Angeles even...
She's black.
Listen, it doesn't matter. I mean, she is no Nelson Mandela. We can tell you that, okay? And she was warned ahead of time.
Way ahead of time.
About these conditions.
Way ahead of time.
And she went anyway because she had to get on her DEI hot high horse. But she's never going anywhere. She's not even a Kamala. She's so bad.
Oh, I think she's going to get reelected when this happens. If this were New York, you know what happens.
If this was New York, they'd make her the president.
No, that's the one thing people care about. Be here when there's a garbage problem or other stuff. They care about that. And you want that person in town. And Bloomberg was able to get away with it. He was able to get away with it.
Oh, the snowstorm. Yeah.
Because
when he was in Bermuda.
But he has this easy access to right back with his private plane.
Right. He came back. She went to the inauguration when her city is burning to the ground.
Knew it was going to, I shouldn't say knew it was
going. She was warned.
She was warned well in advance.
Too arrogant to listen. So she also...
That's a bitch. That's a sick bitch. She ought not to be reelected.
She's no lady then. She also cut $17.6 million from the police department to direct towards homelessness and the like. And when she did it, people were concerned that it was going to undermine like the fire department's response and effectiveness. I mean, it's not a huge chunk. It's probably not maybe that's true, maybe that's not. She also has been a fierce advocate of this DEI stuff, even within the fire department. Instead of picking qualified people based on merit, she wants to racialize everything, including going to that inauguration, as you noted, and then to add insult to injury, when she got back and was questioned about this, she couldn't even respond. She was completely taken aback.
She had some simple response that there's no indication of a failure on her part at all.
No, she's completely flabbergasted.
Because it's going to happen anyway, or something. It was some remark.
She couldn't even give an appropriate scripted response. It's been laughed at. And then we're also learning that the fire hydrants in the Palisade didn't have enough water.
Yeah.
That's because California has had droughts and has water shortages, and that's been a problem ongoing. And
Well, they've never, in the defense of another side of things, they really haven't taken steps to wean themselves of some of that reliance. They long ago, 70 or 80 years ago, got the stuff from the Colorado River and all.
Right.
And Californians generally have used water excessively, even for agriculture. Planting cotton, I saw cotton being grown in California. That's not a natural spot for it. And
requires a lot of water. And also, I mean, part of it is the management of the land and the resources and the water shortages. But while you're having these droughts and water shortages, the governor of California, Gavin Newson, who was the mayor at San Francisco, that's how he started.
Yeah.
And what I remember him most for is how he cheated on his wife with his best friend's wife. This is a guy during COVID who had strict lockdowns and was caught at a French Laundry, an expensive restaurant, with unmasked. And this is someone who empathized with people who couldn't send their kids to school. Meanwhile, his kids were in private. He's a disgusting, shameless opportunist. Well, while he's been governor, he apparently...
Do you criticize him, though, if you were Trump? Do you criticize him in the midst of a calamity?
I think, no. I don't know. Because you know what? The guy is so repulsive. He's so unlikable. But I think you probably should refrain and let the chips fall where they may. Because people are going to find out the facts, which is Gavin Newsom has engaged in this extreme environmentalism. He's removed dams from California, which is cut. People were concerned by doing that. And he did it, quote unquote, to protect the ecological situation as well as
fish, the tribes, other things.
The indigenous tribes rely on this fishing.
Yeah, the salmon.
Livelihood. Exactly. So he did this, but he didn't think that you might have water shortages. Maybe those hydrants wouldn't be empty.
To take other actions if you're really concerned about, and you haven't mentioned climate change yet in this whole thing.
Well, I was going to say that he has been a zealot on the climate issue, but I don't trust the Democrats to tell me anything about science, Stu. And let's step back for a second. They have been talking about global warming, how everything's melting, blah, blah, blah. But guess how much global temperatures have increased? And over what period of time? 1.4 degrees over the last 120 years. Stu, that's what we've had. Now, I don't really know I'm not a scientist, but I can assure you, Gavin Newsom, who isn't particularly bright, as noted by his academic record and his record as governor, is not someone I want to I want to know there are probably things we can do to preserve our environment and the like, but you have to do it in a way that's pragmatic and doesn't disadvantage people. For example, mandating that everyone drive electric cars, which aren't all that usable, frankly, and things of that nature. More importantly, the batteries in electric cars, if they're ever in a fire, you cannot put it out through traditional means. And they spew chemicals all over the place. No one knows what to do with those batteries. There aren't enough charging stations. We could go on and on.
But there are, the vast majority of scientists, I would say, believe that there's a significant human input into our climate problems and our climate issue. And it's not just a question of 1.2 whatever degrees. There are other reasons.
Well, for generations, we have tried to improve the way we treat our environment. But at the end of the day,
you got to start reducing the carbon into the atmosphere. And that's not going to happen if you drill, baby, drill.
You know what? But this has been a solution since the 70s when some of these issues came up, when we had our first environmental president, Jimmy Carter. We could be pursuing nuclear power, which is the environmentalists have been vigorously opposed to it, even though it is cleaner and it is safer now than it used to be. Yet we don't pursue it. The only thing they want to pursue are things that don't work because they're idiots.
Well, there's activity on the business front on small nuclear modules,
right?
But there's still an issue of how you dispose of nuclear fuel, and we'll.
No, there's no perfect solution, but I can assure you, Stu, Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and the rest of them, they do not have the answer, nor does that ridiculous Kathy Hochul. But on that note, I don't care that the celebrities' houses are burning. They deserve it. They vote for these people. They fund them. I hope all their belongings.
Did you repeat that? What did you just say? You don't care if what?
The celebrities.
What about them?
I'm glad their houses are burning.
Oh, come on.
They deserve it. They vote for these people, and they subject the rest of us to it, and they fund them. Now, I feel bad for the normal people.
The evergreen.
I don't feel... If J-Lo couldn't throw her $1 million party too bad, she can go find her.
I agree. These people are not threatened by the loss of their home, these big guys.
No.
And there are so many others that you care more about. More about, certainly, people who've lost their jobs by virtue of this.
Their jobs. I mean, it's
not only their home, but their jobs and their cars and their...
They don't even have basic infrastructure left. And this is what the Democrats give us.
It's just a great tragedy. This one's going to be so long in the correction.
I don't even know if there's a way to fix California. It's such a mess. It's even worse than New York, if that's at all possible. But on that positive note, happy 2025. At least you got to go to Staten Island. So on that note, may we say good riddance to all the libtards. We're now entering the Trump era. And I am going to be one of the ones on the first plane to Greenland because I want to spend my days freezing my ass off where there's nothing to do. It's even worse than going to Staten Island.
He's not talking about colonizing it.
No.
I passed through Reykjavik once.
I've been there too.
And so, I mean, that had housing for troops, and I passed, and there was an AWACS plane with a large circular thing in the back. And that's what they want. They don't want the Chinese there.
Well,
militarily, it's a big deal.
I guess. You know what? It's just cuckoo shit. It's not going to do us.
So you won't volunteer to be one of the first ones?
I'm too old.
Oh, no, you're not.
To be in the military?
No, I mean, they'll take civilian volunteers, I'm sure.
Well, this volunteer, you know what? The only thing I'm volunteering to do after we finish our discussion is get a massage. I've done enough. But anyway, until next week, Stu.
See you, folks.